sudden they do something like
and a line is drawn through the budgeting process, and you go, okay. Again, IHG was sucking all the air out of
customers on a annual basis. But if your business need is that level of architecture, you have 5 choices, 4 really, to go through, and they all have their challenges. Like CRS has become the new PMS of our space, where it's like, if you're going above the fold on like, I want to make sure I'm talking to someone who will be there when I'm up for renewal, you only have a few choices, or you're going startup, which I don't want to poo-poo on that. Like, they've all been startups at some point, but
I think ironically, high tech is going to be interesting this year. I think there's going to be some interesting convergence stuff going on in high tech. I'm seeing a lot of players that normally haven't been at high tech announcing that they're going to be at high tech. And these are, to your credit, Ed, about the better in business stuff that's not been in hospitality wanting to show up. I've heard a lot more about the fact that Salesforce is going to make a presence where they hadn't before as much. I think they showed up once that I remember, but it was a small little token booth, I think. But I think that it's going to be an interesting where the tech stack stuff, and I think this is driven a little bit by Oyo's presence. Oyo's only, again, doing leaps and bounds stuff. I mean, I'm sorry I don't have the article for it, but somebody else just joined in on the Oyo bandwagon and dropped some serious coin on them. That they joined up in Europe somewhere. Dang it, now I got to go find the article. But somebody joined forces with Oyo in Europe.
Oh, well, Oyo went and bought a vacation rental business in Europe, I believe. Yeah.
So, and the big proposition that Oyo has that I've always felt the strongest suit is that they own the tech stack that they have. They built their own tech stack. So they walk in and there's
so your advice is that all these brands should build their own tech stack?
What's that?
Your advice is that the brand should start building their own tech stack?
They're trying. They never do well at it.
They should develop their own data streams, control their data streams, and then have things that bolt onto it, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you think that
would be a start.
Well? What? The investment it takes to do that stuff well is unjustifiable at the scale that any of these single businesses are.
But I will also say Marriott has one sitting on the shelf that was a pretty dang good thing until they put it on the shelf, and that was Valkyrie. You know,
Valhalla.
Sorry.
I have to agree with you because a lot of the bubble gum holding Valhalla together was technology I built.
Valhalla, sorry.
But Valhalla. The problem was Valhalla. Marriott determined would not scale enough.
And they were correct,
and they probably were right. So that was the problem. My understanding is Marcia is busting at the seams now with the Starwood stuff. Though it is at its it's running at capacity. It's running hot. So they may need to do something.
Which brings us full circle to Ed's point. I was actually at a Starwood property the other day, and they were talking about how much they hated the new systems they were using. But it's exactly what Ed was saying before. Most people you talk to in the industry, how often do you run into people who talk about how much they love their CRS or love their tech stack?
Actually, right? I can tell you,
you find at best a certain amount of neutrality, and then everybody, and then there's a small vocal contingent who can't stand
some of the travel tripper and some of the SHR guys, I would say.
So Fuel Travel and Flip2 actually did a study on how people felt about the solutions that were available to them. And we didn't just hit up the hoteliers. We also asked the vendors how they felt they were doing to see if there was any.
I remember that actually. That was a good piece.
Yeah. And yes, the answer is no one's happy with the core technology stacks being provided to them.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Easy enough. And what's interesting is it's always for a different reason, but every technology has its challenges, right? I mean, and that's the nature of the beast. However, the answer is not build your own. And I can point to endless amount of brands that are, have gigantic holes in their business because of their technology stack. And you see kind of what's happened. Like I think Wyndham has become more nimble since moving off of their what was originally 7 CRSs that's whittled down to 3 or 4, I believe, before they finally did the migration to the Sabre platform. But that doesn't mean it was perfect.
Yeah.
So I was hoping Tim would chime in.
Well, Nope.
Nope.
Anything to do with Wyndham and or their tech stack is, off limits.
And again, to get the topic back to Tammy, the compliments of Tammy's performance in managing that god awful migration of all those brands, that went. I mean, Tammy might not say that it went really smooth perspective. Maybe there were some bumps and it didn't go as well as she would, but boy, everybody else in the ecosystem was like, she's awesome.
Tammy is
really
the most
well.
experienced person in the world on migrating hotels to a CRS platform.
At the volume that
she's certainly among them. Though I the only reason I will say this was because I happened to be in the room at the Hotel Data Conference last year, where Tammy mentioned this specifically. Was, you know, Wyndham was very fortunate to have a really good team working on this. You know, they had a bunch of folks who had a lot of experience, not just Tammy, but people who, you know, who have been there for a while or come from other parts of the industry and the like. And I mean, you know, you've seen news stories like what Marriott's going through with Starwood and bringing them on to Marcia and things along those lines. And I think Wyndham as an organization can be proud of the fact that you haven't heard a lot of those stories about what, you know, about people having significant challenges, whether it was with, you know, the migration that they did overall to Sabre, or whether it was just the other day when they a couple weeks back when they integrated La Quinta and brought on a 900 hotel chain, chain, you know, and again, happily, I don't think you've seen any news stories or any, you know, talk of people saying, hey, this has been a real disaster or anything along those lines by any stretch of the imagination. So I think Wyndham as the team should be commended for that.
Yeah.
One of two things is happening. It's not just Tammy and the team that Tammy assembled as a leader. Could be
Tammy is the Nick Fury of an impressive team.
I like that. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Fury.
Be sure to tell her I compared her to Nick Fury, and then tell her who Nick Fury is.
Oh my gosh, she couldn't live in a house with me and not know who Nick Fury is. If there's two things my wife knows about secondhand, it is comic books. You know, the Avengers generally, comic books generally, and the Avengers specifically, and you know, guitars. She knows a lot more about guitars than she first knew, you know, 27 years ago.
Probably more than she wanted to know.
Or hey, there's alternative
part,
B.
Yeah.
There is alternative B, being New Jersey based, that just any witnesses disappear quickly.
You can't prove that, Congressman.
No, yeah. Tammy doesn't know where the bodies are buried, but Tim spends a lot of time with a shovel.
All I'm saying is that's a real nice CRS you have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Leave the gun, take the cannoli.
Exactly. You know, it's funny. I was sitting next to a flight attendant. This is a complete digression, but I was sitting next to a flight attendant flying back from Chicago the other day, and we just got to talking about, you know, traveling regularly and things along those lines. And she was talking about cities that you fly from, and I'm not going to name the city, you know, but you're flying to, say, Cancun, or you're flying to some resort area, and having somebody, you know, either flag the flight attendant down at the beginning of the flight, or come back to the galley early in the flight or whatever, and try to slip her a 20 and be like, and say, you know, make sure you don't forget about me during the flight.
Vegas.
So Dallas. People from Dallas.
Yeah.
I just thought it was the funniest thing. I'd never heard that before, and I was laughing heartily as she was describing, you know, certain types of customers. And she said it's mostly specific routes. Like, it's not a thing you see generally, but you know.
But now there have been so many blog posts on the Insider's Guide to Vegas to bribe the desk clerks.
Oh, sure.
Give them a 50. And in a lot of these places, it's like, you know, they'll turn it down. They're like, no, insist and do this. It's just not. It's not great.
Right.
Because again, in the good old days, yeah, but now, no, not so much. So, you know, depending on which of the, you know, the 42 desk clerks at the long line at the front desk, you got randomly.
Right.
You want to look.
They don't
for
have a
the
lot of control over
eyes.
that. Yeah, exactly.
So
So I kind of feel like we've hit a weird point now. Like, how do we go back to seriousness after what has been a completely
Hey, you got-
ridiculous
I got two
line of talk?
I've got two things. I mentioned I was speaking at the Hotels Beds conference, and there was a little debate about rate parity, perhaps.
there was.
And let me tell you, I can say Hotel Beds is dealing with that in a very, very proactive manner. And I certainly told the 500 people in attendance when I had a core and Posadas on the stage with somebody from Hotel Beds and said, look, they aren't going to say it, but I am. Here's the problem. If there's one bad actor that they're going to go find out who's doing this wrong. And if it comes through as Hotel Beds, it doesn't come through necessarily as who the ultimate, source was. But I said the only way they can fix this is yanking at the end of the line and seeing which bell rings. And if they say make that stop and it doesn't stop, they cut off Hotel Bed, and you guys are going to be screwed. So this is serious. These guys are going to be amping up those efforts, and at least in the Accor and Posadas world, they are like, no, we are getting very serious about this and stop messing around because there will be ramifications. So.
And so what did Hotel Beds say? 'Cause I haven't heard where they're being proactive here.
Oh no, they are internally with their folks. They are now.
Is this in the way Philip Morris is proactive on?
No. No. These guys are pretty smart. I mean, they have actually, I think the sources of who's sourcing business through Hotel Beds and the volumes would surprise a lot of people. And I can't go into more detail than that, but they are a large source of inventory.
Yes.
Now that they have GTA and Tarico and all of that stuff,
Right.
and they know if they don't clean this stuff up, they are. But
how much is that them just saying that and doing some token moves so they can kind of say, hey, we made an effort here? Because I got to tell you, Tarico for years was saying that they would do stuff about it. But
Tarico was always BS. They didn't care. That was their business.
Right.
Model.
And so forgive me for looking at this as, is this the same way TripAdvisor says that their ranking on hotels on TripAdvisor is serving
retail generally available sort of stuff? I think they are legitimately looking at this and reining it in. For closed groups, it's carte blanche, folks. So if that's going to be the whole thing, because
so we're just not going to screw you publicly.
Oh no! But that's the only
privately,
thing.
It's still going to happen.
Because
actually, I don't believe it or not. I don't have a problem with what they do with closed groups. What I do have a problem with is how they define closed groups.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Anyone with a neck is not a closed group.
Right. No, I realize that.
But I mean, seriously.
Scarves, then yes, they are.
But if you have, if you have a legitimate closed group, I don't have a problem with it. But it's how they define closed groups that I think we've got some real problems with.
So if you're a member of an airline loyalty program, right, and you would like to buy a hotel with points, sort of thing, is that a closed group?
Not anymore. I mean,
my favorite
points.
You're only going to get it a certain way, probably.
My favorite statistic about loyalty programs. Yeah. My favorite loyalty program, my favorite statistic about loyalty programs is that in the United States, we're a population of about 300 million, and there are roughly 3 billion loyalty memberships in the United States, or roughly 10 for every man, woman, and child. So they're not the closedest groups that they once were.
What is that really? 75 for every adult? Then
exactly. Yeah. It's absurd.
But when somebody has a ton of United points, guess what? They are not converting them to Bonvoy points because the exchange sucks, right? It's stupid,
god awful.
But they can go to other sources that go and wind up buying those, those rooms.
And so you're telling me Hotel Beds is ensuring that's the only way that rate is going out there. They're not
they
at
aren't
all.
ensuring it. They're just
Right.
providing the marketplace where people can access that stuff at discount.
Right, and
The
if
hotels
and if
are putting in
then
the
it's on the
inventory.
airline to actually enforce it and do it right, but they don't.
No.
Like this is the thing. Like, and
No,
and
the airline is
me,
going to go search for the lowest cost source of
right,
that inventory, right? And
right.
that's it. They're going to go or Capital One or
And they're
doesn't
going to
matter.
say
Or
they paid with points for this. Oh, really? Yeah, they applied $1 worth of points to this transaction.
yeah, they did. They applied
mean,
whatever dollar worth of points, and then they bought the stuff for cash. Cash goes to the
Right.
hotel
So is
companies.
that really a
and
closed
that's it.
group?
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. By every single rate parity agreement I have been exposed
That I
to, which
agree
is
with.
probably
Like, but
north of
ethically,
200.
ethically, what Tim's
It
talking
is.
about is ethically is they're all
That's
they're doing
ethically
is
completely. There's no problem with that. I have absolutely no problem with that ethically at all. You're converting points. They're buying it on an open marketplace, right? That stuff is being provided at a net rate by the hoteliers. Now, the hoteliers might say, "Hey, I didn't know my stuff was going out to do that," and it's like, okay, that's a good point, but you're working with a very large bed bank that works with a large number of groups, and right now when business is at a peak, right, they aren't gonna like it. Let me tell you. Oh, and one of the questions we asked, interestingly, all these guys who were the travel sellers, right, but we asked them when they thought the next downturn was going to be. I would say 80% thought within the next 2 years, which I think was pretty interesting. I think the hoteliers are much more optimistic than this group, right? And just wait till that downturn happens. Those hotels are going to turn right to them and go, "Send more, send more,
Yeah,
please.
yeah,
How
yeah.
can I get more?" Right?
I'm
So, yeah.
I'm actually surprised they're that bullish. I'm a little more bearish than that, frankly.
Oh, actually, it
I
was
think
50
the odds
some.
again.
50 some were within a year.
Yeah,
50 some, and
yeah,
then there
there
was
you go.
another 30 within 2 years.
But
Yeah, I mean,
still think
going back to our gambling thing from before, I
Right.
would certainly lay money that it's within 2 years easily, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's the next 12 to 18 months.
right,
I
or
think-
it's already started in certain.
Or it already started in certain markets. Exactly.
Already in New York, I can tell you from just
Yeah.
first experiences with it, you're seeing stuff now in market. You're
Yeah.
seeing some peaks and valleys, and ironically, and we're trying to dissect some of this a little bit. Our actual traffic and demand and conversions are up. We can't sustain ADR.
Right.
The rates
Yeah.
of market right now
no.
are lower, and we
That's
can't
right.
push ADR up, even though demand seems to be still growing. We can't push ADR.
Well,
And-
that means your source of demand must be changing.
and
That's right.
and the pre-book
Or
and
more inventory in market
Inflated.
that's holding.
Well, New York, that's a huge problem for them. Is
Right,
the amount
right.
of inventory that's come on
Right.
market is
Right.
right.
insane.
You also have, and again with the Airbnb situation, that dynamic inventory push in there, and that's
Right.
early book, and that depresses the initial rate in offerings
Yep.
into market at
Yep.
time, and you're fighting that, and it's just hard to push the needle.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going, "Good gosh, we got great demand, we got great, conversion, but we can't push the rate. We can't get the rate we can't move that needle,
Right.
So, yeah, there's cause and effects going on in the market right now.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, actually, I want me to go through just some. We had presentations from Google, from Amazon, McKinsey.
What was
who
the
else was
event, Robert? I missed what you said when you started.
Oh, it's the Hotel Beds Market Hub.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
the North
okay, yep.
American Market Hub Conference, which I don't think they hold every year. Maybe it's every other year or something like that. But yeah, there were some pretty interesting things actually. On the rate parity side, even the guy, like Sam Turner, who's kind of the head of the vertical, he's kind of the face of this. It was like the
So what is he,
second
the head
point.
or the face?
He's both. He's well, his head is on his, his face is on his head, Ed. But
Sorry.
he basically said, basically on their stats, 52% of travelers visit the hotel website as a normal course of booking, right? And 72% are visiting price comparison sites, right? So what's happening is the look to book rate they looked at is about 4x, right? Just in the last couple of years, it is just skyrocketing with everybody's, and I think it was the Book Direct campaigns, right? So the Book Direct come to our website, so it kind of worked. But if you have to go, stop clicking around to go to Hilton, all these guys are going, well, I guess I better go to Marriott too, and I guess I better go to Hyatt, and I better go to this, and all of a sudden, and then they wind up at a price comparison site anyway to go, to try to sort it out.
Yeah,
so that was.
But that brings us full circle to what Ed was talking about when I showed up, and I know I walked in a little late on that conversation, so I'm not going to beat this to death because you may have done it to death before I walked in. But that's one of the reasons why you have to work so hard to differentiate yourself, so it doesn't become a case of, okay, I'm the Marriott on one side of the street, I'm the Hilton on the other side of the street, I'm the Wyndham on the other corner, right? And now we're solely competing on, a one king non-smoking or a double non-smoking or something like that, right? And what rate are we competing at?
It's funny to go here.
Ourselves apart.
My 10 a.m. that made me late for this show was a owner of a marketing agency that has only been in travel for a year from a specialty perspective. So we were kind of talking about some of the history of how we got here, and it's very funny when you get to see an outside marketer's perspective on trying to consume the fact that our product is not at all could be considered a commodity in any measurable form, and yet our marketing
does its best to commoditize it
as
absolutely
as much as possible, and customer lifetime value is not focused on enough, and I can attest to that. I can tell you, I've spoken to multiple major brands through different conversations where I've asked, how do you attribute customer lifetime value? What do you consider the customer lifetime value of a loyalty member versus what's the customer lifetime value of a newly acquired person through this?
Right.
I've never gotten an answer.
Right.
And I've gotten we'll go look to see how we do that. And then I never get an answer. So if you want to know, part of the problem is there's no hospitality in our digital marketing. For some reason, we have completely lost sight of what matters to win and keep relationships.
Absolutely.
That I actually think, and
Book
again,
now.
Right, exactly. That is part of why there's always been this reliance on outside parties to drive demand. Because even before the internet, there were other types of outside parties driving demand. Because this industry has, for some reason, whether it's the intense focus on the hospitality culture, or I've never been able to put my finger on why this industry has never embraced we need to figure out how to truly acquire and keep our own customers as a core focus. It's always this year's big rock is we're going to try and keep more customers, but it never becomes just it's an everyday, every year, no matter what changes in the consumer landscape. Goal number 3 for our organization is to acquire and keep our own customers.
Right.
Yeah. Some groups, some smaller groups, I think did that. I think Joie de Vivre did it quite effectively prior to their acquisition, which I think maybe not so much anymore. But certainly in the Chip Conley years,
all the new benchmark hotels, you mean?
But I think actually Ed already said it before. Four Seasons, that was certainly the focus when I was
and the ones you actually can tell when you come across an org that is a key focus. Actually, some of Stewart's customers at Fuel, it's a focus of theirs, and my gosh, it you can see it in everything, because anything they try now just outperforms every industry benchmark, because fundamentally everything it's being done on has that core focus of acquire and keep.
Right. Yeah. I would argue.
Oh, Wolf. What is it? Great Wolf. The Wadi Park. Things like that.
Yeah, Great Wolf. Yep.
I would argue Leading did a very good job of it.
Huge focus on that.
Back in the day, I would agree.
During the Ted Tang era, I would say Leading did a very good job of that. And I want to be very clear: the Ted Tang era officially ended like 2 weeks ago. So for all I
Exactly.
know, Shannon and her team will continue to do that. I'd be surprised if they didn't. But no, I mean, that was something I can speak to, I think, pretty comfortably. Their loyalty program was and is a paid loyalty program.
Absolutely.
So a lot of that was around, we need to make sure we're taking very good care of these customers and making sure they see a value from that.
Yeah, so and I'm definitely not saying there aren't examples of
Sure.
but
And
they're not.
By the way, I only
nearly-
worked there for 2 years of the Ted Ting era, so this isn't a backhanded way of me saying we did this. This was leading. I think this was something Ted, when he came in, was very clear about its importance, and he was there for 10 years. So I think
Right.
they
So
leaned into that hard.
But I think there's just not enough focus in our industry of that being a key value.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
and again, it's systematic because of just how the business operates. You have 3 different entities inside of a single location, all with a different agenda that has some overlap in caring about the same thing, but has a ton of stuff that each doesn't care about the other's goals and everything. But it is part of the systemic, what we're always fighting. We're always fighting that don't be a commodity. Don't give away everything to wholesalers. Like attempt to stand up and have your own ability to control your business.
Manage your channels wisely. You optimize each one for what they're good at.
Right.
is
Right.
probably-
Well,
And know who you are as a company.
Yeah, I've said this on the show many, many times. So apologize for repeating myself, but
That's okay. No one wants this.
Well, actually, Ed, to be fair,
kidding.
you've said a very similar thing. So we'll say I'm quoting you today.
But I was quoting you.
So
turtles all the way down. It's an Ouroboros, right?
Yes.
No, it's this idea of, if you're trying to compete with the OTAs at the point of booking, you're fighting the wrong fight.
Yeah.
Right. You need to be talking to guests well before they get to that point. And that's a thing you can do well that the OTAs, frankly, don't do the best job of, nor should they. And you're going to pick up a lot of bookings that come direct because of that, because you're going to get folks who are going to make the decision earlier, and they already know you, right? So it's a huge difference that people need to focus on.
I think one of the
Slide
simplest
number
things
2 and 3 of my standard presentation.
I think one of the most consistent things I recommend to anybody that I work with or work for, or in any collaboration that I speak at, is, when was the last time you booked a room at your own hotel? When was the last time you and followed through with things? Because I have yet, no matter how great a place it could be, even this trip I just had out of Phoenix, that there isn't breaks in the chain. There is always something that doesn't function the way it was intended, or done the way it was supposed to be done, or handled the way it was supposed to be handled. And it can be situational, whatever you want to call it. It's training, it's technology, it's process. There's always breaks to this. Some simplistic example was the place I went to, the Beaumont, which is a beautiful place, historic, wonderful place, all that great stuff. I have great things to say about it. Team and people I met over there, fantastic. But simple flaw, they recommend a driver service to pick you up at the airport, and you can charge it to your room. Unfortunately, the driving service didn't know how to do that, nor did the bellman, nor did the front desk. And it ended up you had to charge it on your own card anyway, where you couldn't apply it to the room, because the driver's like, hey, I need to get paid. And it's like, well, I'm supposed to be able to charge it to my room. Ends up, eventually I found out that the driver was supposed to go to the front desk and get a voucher, and that voucher be reimbursed. But nobody in the chain when I was there knew that. And no detriment to the resort. The resort is still amazingly wonderful. But when you start with small hiccups like that, you get a critical eye. And then you notice 6 lights out in the lobby and spider webs in the ceiling of the dining room. And all of a sudden you look at things differently because you have started wrong.
And spiderwebs is just part of the historic feel.
Well, it
That's
was.
right.
It was. I mean, those light bulbs have been in existence for 80 years, so why not? So anyway,
but actually, they weren't light bulbs. They were actually just covers on a gas fixture, and it just someone forgot to light it.
By the same token, the historian that walked us around for the tour, fabulous man, and in the front desk team, helpful and cooperative, and the people I met on the team there, great people.
Well, flaws are going to exist in every business. How you overcome it.
That's exactly right.
your people and caring and
Right.
empowering your employees to help where
Right.
it's needed. However, that does not mean you can just completely ignore everything. You do need balance so that you're not relying on an MVP employee to save
Yeah.
every
Right.
single guest who comes through because you have a completely flawed
Well,
experience.
I also lean on something a GM who I respect a lot told me once upon a time. He said, rolls and coffee, right? Or bread and coffee, right? You go to a restaurant, what's the first encounter you have with the staff? They bring bread, they bring rolls.
Mhm.
What's the last thing that happens? They bring you your coffee, right?
Yeah.
People remember the first interaction, they remember the last interaction, and they remember the interaction that they remember you fixing an interaction in the middle or not
Right.
fixing an interaction in the middle, right?
Right.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'll give you a great example.
But the interactions
yeah.
that just go the way they're supposed to, most people don't remember that if you got the bread right, if you got the coffee right.
I stayed at a leading hotel of the world, a Grand Palladium, new hotel, opened 6 months ago, in Playa Mujeres, just north of Cancun. Right. The one thing I will remember, yes, resort is good, everything's fine, was I got off stage at 1:15 because it was running late. I had a pickup for my transfer at 1:30, and that resort doesn't have the best design in terms of layout of how people get from building to building. They have all these golf carts that run around, right?
Yeah.
So I made it from the convention center over the front desk. Said this, the guy who was the doorman goes, "Oh," he looked around and goes, "I'll take you." Right? Hopped into a golf cart, took me there, and then said, "And I'll wait for you," because I had to get from my room where my bag was, things like that, and it would have taken too long to. Can we send a bellman? Up to get it. Just all that. That's just too many moving parts. I'll wait for you. I'll do that, and then take you to the secondary registration place because I was in the adults only section of the resort. The guy, he didn't have to do that.
The full nude. He was in the full nude part.
It was that kind of conference.
No, but anyway, that out of the whole thing, I mean, they had great food. Everything's well done. Is that guy, right?
Yeah.
He didn't have to do that. He could have gone. Yeah, I've called for a golf cart. One will be here soon.
He didn't do the
5 minutes. Yeah.
Sucks to be you.
To have a guy drop me off at my room so I can run up and then look for another golf cart or figure out in very 86-degree, 83% humidity.
And this is where I think every hotel would benefit from having a person whose goal is solving problems.
Oh,
like that's it. That's all their job is.
Right.
They don't belong to a single department. They're a problem solver. And the reason I think this is I think about my interactions with my enterprise clients. And I listen for problems. I have a very large enterprise client, and I was on a call that had nothing to do with me. I was just there as a supporting role. And I heard a comment that floored me, which was 21% of their call center call volume is people calling to make sure that their reservation they just did online went through.
Right.
Yep.
And it wasn't said like there was anything wrong with it. It was just mentioned like, oh, we got to keep in mind 21% is this and this. And then I went to the chief person. I won't say their title because it's enough that you could figure out who they are. And I was like, hey, did I hear that 21% of your call center volume is people calling immediately after completing a reservation online? He goes, yeah. He's like, that may be a little low. It may be higher than that. And I was like, so do you know why that happens? And he's like, yeah, we're fairly certain. I said, can you explain to me why? And he explained it to me. And it's a technical issue with two different systems they use and the delay in producing a real confirmation. So they don't send out an immediate confirmation email. And I was like,
yeah, let's fix that.
Can I make a suggestion? Is okay, I know you can't give them a confirmation in the first confirmation email that could be instant that you can technically trigger. Can you maybe give them we've received your booking and it's processing, you will get a confirmation within X, but your booking is good.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, probably. And I said, so that would cut a big chunk out of your 21, possibly more percent of your call volume. How much money do you think that would save you? And he's like, I would save us a ton of money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so how long have you known about this issue? And he's like, oh, the org's been known about it for years. And I'm like, oh my God. But
that
if
goes
you
to
had
the
someone,
side.
if you had someone like me inside an org who belonged to no one,
Right.
and was just purely there to solve problems,
Yep.
both
It's funny,
technically,
given the-
operationally.
Given the time of day, by the way, given what time it's getting to be, and Ed, if they wanted to find someone like you to solve problems for,
That's a good point.
Nice, nice.
Well, right behind Robert, you can see a problem solver.
Yeah.
Is that Seth?
That's right. It's Seth. Hey, Seth.
Yeah. So, anyways, I
Come
mean,
on.
that's I continually try to think of like what is the way a hotel can fix things. And I think someone having a focus on problem solving, like
Sure.
just fix these things, because it's a death of 1,000 paper cuts at a lot of these properties.
I'll tell you a recommendation that I make to agencies that ask my advice to help them with their client engagements. Why I get business from them? Why do people leave other agencies and want me to go fix their stuff? As I said, because you don't talk to them anymore, and you don't have an advocate for their perspective.
Right.
You're not training them to use your product. You're not keeping them informed as to the usabilities of your product. And you certainly don't have an advocate that goes into your system, to your point, Ed, as an unbiased outside entity and says, hey, what's wrong with this? Why is it that your client is being neutral or maybe even negative towards their engagements with you? And they don't like your answers, or they don't know what questions to ask, whatever. And so I keep telling these guys, is like, make a client advocate in your client relationship.
Right.
You know, have somebody speak to the client, say, here, I'm here to make sure that your voice is heard, that you're utilizing our product to its full potential. So let's drop the veneers. Let's talk about how we can be better for you. How much do you know about our system? How well is it doing? And you'd be surprised, rather than trying to find new clients, keep the ones you got.
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy.
And wait a second, Lauren. I thought you got all your clients because you couldn't answer their questions at conferences, and they all got free. Yeah.
And then they
So-
felt guilty and kept them on.
Hey,
Yeah.
can I throw in?
Actually,
Can I throw in one?
before you throw in anything, I really do have to run. I know.
Okay,
I showed
Tim,
up at
if
noon,
people
but I
want
only
to
had an hour
find
today.
you or 90% of the internet, where should they go?
All knowledge of the internet.
If
Yeah, the
you're
refined
interested
conference knowledge.
in if you want to know most of the stuff on the internet, I suggest google.com. But if you want to know about Tim Peter and Associates, you can find us at timpeter.com. I'm also TC Peter on Twitter.
And what is that cool, super neat software that is super efficient on research and everything that you're doing? Your software thing.
Solosegment.com.
Which
Thank
is
you very much for letting us get in a little plug there too.
Sponsor of the Hospitality Digital Marketing.
It's actually now just the Hospitality Marketing Show.
Oh, Hospitality Marketing Show. Yeah. Oh, look at that! Oh, I didn't see the whiteout, and okay, good.
Why not
Nicely
take
done.
the digital right off of there, right?
Well, Tim,
tell
Tammy I said Happy Mother's Day.
Yes, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers in your lives, and I hope you all have a great weekend. And unfortunately, I'm going to miss the next 2 weeks. I will be I'm moderating a panel at a conference next Friday, and I will be in Dublin, Ireland, the week after that for a little personal downtime. So
you're going to be drunk.
I'll be in Amsterdam.
Both
You're in
So
At the Guinness, yeah.
on both Fridays, but the next 2 Fridays you will be drunk.
we can only hope.
You'll be in Ireland, and I'll be in Amsterdam. We'll be on the other side. We'll be in the similar time zones.
Fantastic. Well, very cool. Well, I will see you guys in 3 weeks' time. So sorry I'll miss
Safe
the next
travels,
couple
my
of shows,
friend.
but see you all soon, and vaya con Dios, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. All right.
Thanks, Mr. Tim.
All right.
Bye, guys.
And actually, with that, since I'd like to eat lunch.
Yes, Mr. Ed, where can people find about the wonderful, mysterious world of Flip2?
Yes, go to flip.to, or you can find me on social media, Edward St. Ange.
Excellent. And Mr. Robert, Mr. Robert Coles.
Robert K. Cole on social media or rockcheetah.com. And I was going to say Google Travel's mission statement, they published it here. I had never seen it anywhere else, but everybody's leaving, so that's okay.
I know. We're going to throw it to next week, because I want to get some details out on Google's move into the automotive industry and how that's going to change, because they're going to use Waze with Assistant now. And that means your car interaction is going to have a whole different perspective about where you're going to go and what you're going to do, because you can talk to your car a hell of a lot better now that they've connected some of these things together. So I want to put some
Android
more,
Auto is coming out. Yeah, they're updating Android Auto.
Microsoft's got to go, damn, because they've been trying so hard to keep in the auto industry. I mean, they've been pushing hard.
They
to be in the
really
auto-
tried hard. All they have is Ford.
I used the old Android Auto last weekend in Chicago, and it works pretty well. But you had to kind of keep pushing. Okay, I want to do the assistant. I want to play music. I want to hit directions, and they're going to integrate all that stuff and not be quite as siloed. Yeah,
to a seamless conversation.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yep. For archives of this show, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. Look for show number 196. Yeah.
For one more month, 1 month from today. So June, what is that going to be?